Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Hi, 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 hi. Hi, everyone. Happy Sunday. More importantly, happy Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, which is March. I'm really grateful to see all of you today, and I'm super excited for this conversation. We're going to be talking about the future of healthcare in the era of AI, and I'm joined by people who are working hard to eradicate colorectal cancer and to promote screening and the latest technology. So joining me is Medtronic's Chief Technology and Innovation Officer, Ken Washington, Brooks Bell, who is a cancer survivor who was diagnosed with colorectal cancer when she was just 38 years old, and now she is an advocate for screening and awareness. Give Brooks a big round of applause. Dr. Rajesh Keswani, a clinician utilizing AI in colonoscopy screenings. Come on, you can do better than that. Give it up for Raj. And finally, Dr. Austin Chiang. He's the Chief Medical Officer for Medtronic's endoscopy operating business, who's also a leading voice on healthcare on social media. So give it up for Dr. Austin. So, as many of you might remember, my husband, Jay Monahan, died of colorectal cancer in 1998 when he was just 42 years old, and our girls were just 6 and 2 at the time. And ever since that, I have been on a journey to raise awareness and research dollars for this disease, which is the second leading cancer killer of men and women combined. And I know a lot of people didn't feel comfortable talking about colorectal cancer. But in 2000, as some of you might remember, if you're as old as I am or close to my age, I had a colonoscopy on the Today Show because, let's face it, nothing says good morning like showing your colon on national television. Am I right? Anyway, it was really an important step, I think, to educate the public and to inform people about the importance of screening and early detection, that lives can be saved. And I never wanted people to be diagnosed and say these two words, if only. So while colon cancer screenings increased 20% after I had that colonoscopy, it's something I think we need to talk about continuously and educate people, really, because it's so easy to put this screening and this whole issue on the back burner. So I'm really excited to have this conversation, and I hope that afterwards, every one of you, if you're 45 or over, will make an appointment to get a colon cancer screening, talk to your doctor, and tell your friends and family members, because you want to be around for them, and they want you to be around as well. So let's start with this conversation. You know, I was disturbed when I learned the findings of a recent Medtronic survey, you all. 1 in 3 women wrongly believe that colonoscopies aren't recommended until age 50, even though 3 years ago the screening age was lowered to 45. And only 44% of Gen X women, I think many of you fall in that category, that's women between the ages of 44 and 59, many of whom are the recommended age for colonoscopy screening, have actually had one, even though 80% of those same women have had a mammogram. So Austin, Dr. Austin Chiang, I'm going to start with you. Why are we seeing such a lack of awareness and education, especially among women, around screening? Because I know I talk about it constantly, and it's frustrating that they're not getting the message.
Yeah, well, thank you for kind of educating everyone about the new screening recommendations of getting a colonoscopy starting at age 45. And previously, I think that recommendation of age 50 is so deeply ingrained in kind of the conversations around colorectal cancer that I think a lot of people still have that belief that it's still age 50, and maybe a lot of women are still kind of used to that versus getting their colonoscopy at age 45. And on top of that, I think that, you know, it's interesting to see that there's such a disproportionate amount of attention towards other conditions like breast cancer and a lot of investment towards messaging around mammograms. And in some ways, that messaging is very targeted, and I think that's probably one reason why women are more receptive to that conversation. And on top of that, I think colonoscopy, as you mentioned, you know, there's a lot of taboo and stigma talking about butts. and
colons and
colons,
poop
yeah.
and all that stuff. It's like, ew. But, you know, my daughters used to read this book called Everybody Poops. And it's sort of like, if you're lucky, everyone has a colon. Continue, Austin.
That's so true, yeah. And so I think part of it is also that stigma. But no, I think, you know, you mentioned, you know, many Gen Xers here, but also there's this, among younger individuals, Gen Zers, millennials, that's actually where we see the biggest kind of misunderstanding around how colorectal cancer actually doesn't disproportionately affect women. It's actually, you know, it's not just a men's disease. It affects both men and women equally. And so I think maybe part of the reasoning behind that is that on social media especially, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And so that's why I personally feel very strongly about making sure that we're doing a good job as clinicians being on social media, trying to dispel these myths and you know, misconceptions around colon cancer.
So you're saying younger people don't realize that women get colon cancer as often as men?
That understanding is actually more skewed, towards thinking that it's a men's disease versus women's disease.
That's so interesting. Now, Brooks, you're a colon cancer survivor, as I mentioned, and we're so glad you're doing well. And when you were diagnosed, obviously at 38, and we're going to talk about younger and younger people being diagnosed with colon cancer in a moment, but how challenging was it for you as a woman and as a 38-year-old to kind of get that diagnosis? Tell us about that.
I was traveling. I was a business person traveling at a conference, and went to the bathroom one morning, saw that I had blood in my stool, and called a doctor from my telehealth like that morning, minutes later, because it's very concerning. And she was like, "Oh, it's a hemorrhoid. You're good. Like, it'll go away." And so I was relieved, continued my life. And then it continued to pop up every couple of days in the toilet. And I thought, you know what, I should probably get examined, like actually examined versus a telehealth. And so I went home and I had an appointment with my primary care doctor. And so she examined me. She rooted around in there for a few minutes. And she was like, "I don't feel anything. I don't feel a hemorrhoid." And she's like, "But it's still probably a hemorrhoid." And she was like, "So, call me in a month. Here's some hemorrhoid cream." And so I've been bleeding on and off for over a month at that point. And I thought, that doesn't sound like a hemorrhoid to me. And you didn't find one. And so I think I went home. I'm like, I do not feel good about this. And so I cold called a gastroenterologist and to get a third opinion, and showed up, and they were like, "This is going to cost you $200 to see this person because you weren't referred." So it was just like every step of the way, it was sort of like little barriers and discouragement. And when I finally got in front of a doctor, a gastroenterologist, they were like, 2 months of bleeding is not normal. And the way you're describing what it actually looks like does not sound like a hemorrhoid, and that you are not too young for colon cancer. And so I got a colonoscopy 4 days later, and sure enough, it was already a stage 3 tumor that was causing the bleeding. And had I waited, had it grown a single millimeter deeper into my colon wall, my odds of survival would have been 10 points lower. So it still took me about 60 days to diagnosis, and that is not uncommon. It's actually for people under the age of 50, the average days to diagnosis is over 200.
Wow. And did you feel that there was some bias, not only because of your age when it came to getting diagnosed, Brooks, but also because of your gender?
My doctors were all women, so it's hard to say. But I would say that, with hemorrhoids, like women, I've never had kids, but I understand that hemorrhoids are very common with women, especially when they're pregnant. And so I think especially women who are, I've heard so many women who had some bleeding during their pregnancy or shortly afterwards, ignored it, and then found out that it was because of a tumor not related to her pregnancy. And so I hear stories over and over again of younger women who are giving birth and birth-giving age who are getting colon cancer, and that it was missed because of all of the symptoms related to pregnancy, that were actually due to cancer.
You know, it's infuriating to me, honestly, that doctors often, that's sort of the go-to diagnosis when someone comes. I can't even tell you how many people I've also heard of, Brooks, who are basically said, don't worry, it's just a hemorrhoid. And I feel like internists and doctors in general have to be better educated about this, so that's not what they're, you know, they immediately go to. But let's talk about, Raj, if we could, about younger and younger people being diagnosed with colon cancer. In 2023, the American Cancer Society did a study of 153,000 people diagnosed with colon cancer, and it showed a 9% increase in people under 50 just since 2020. So an almost 10% increase over 3 years. All right. Let's talk about this because, you know, I'm very much in this space and I talk to scientists and medical researchers all the time. What is going on here?
Yeah, this is such a challenging thing, and I think I appreciate you giving me the hardest question already. It's very nice of you. This is one of these things that let's focus on the top line first, which is the most critical thing. Colon cancer is occurring at a younger and younger age. We need to know that part. Then the why is equally important, because I think once we get to the why, we'll be able to hopefully prevent it from occurring at a younger and younger age. Unfortunately, the why is still an area of research, right? I want to make sure that we untangle the importance of family history and genetics as a component of this for younger people, and also the environment, which might be things like, you know, the diet we eat, microplastics, which everyone has heard of in the news recently because of coronary artery disease, the microbiome, all these words that you hear that are all important in contributing. I want to make sure we understand those things are important in environment, but we also need to be thinking about the genetic component for an important proportion of people, which is why it's so important for people to know their family history, because that's when you really need to be thinking about colonoscopy, even if asymptomatic at a younger age. So it's a challenging question. I think the most important thing for us to know is this is why the screening guidelines have changed for the average risk patient to get colonoscopy at age 45. That doesn't mean that some people don't need it earlier, again, based on your family history, but for the average risk at 45. And that message, you know, through work that, you know, people like Brooks are doing, that message is resonating out there, but not to everyone, which is why all these sort of efforts are important. And the reason we have this 45-year-old change is that colonoscopy, which is still the most predominant way to screen for colon cancer, isn't just a colon cancer detection test, right? It's a little different than some of our other screening tests. It's the opportunity to find it at the precancerous stage, remove something, and prevent colon cancer. So in many ways, these are messages of, you know, like optimism, right? We've moved the age till 45 because we know it's happening earlier, so we can detect the precancerous lesions earlier. And there are success stories because of that, right? And in our practice, and I'm sure Austin feels the same way, we see patients now at 46, 45, who have lesions that would have certainly turned into cancer if the age had remained 50. I think we have a patient story, a patient of mine that we can show, I think, just to sort of show that that difference that 5 years has made.
When did you get your first colonoscopy, and what prompted you to get screened?
I had my first colonoscopy at age 47, and what prompted me was my primary care physician had recommended. He had said at 45 I should start thinking about it, and so that was what motivated me to do it. At 45, you don't really think that this is going to impact you, so it definitely wasn't something that was pressing on my mind. I had my procedure, and I received the results, and they had said that they found kind of a larger size polyp. My initial response was, this could be something significant. This could be cancer. This could be a big issue, and I didn't want to be dealing with this. So it was a wake-up call.
So what was recommended after you received the results of your colonoscopy?
It was recommended that I see another gastroenterologist that specializes in interventional procedures. The concern was the polyp was larger size and that it may have to be a surgical procedure if they were not able to get it through a colonoscopy. I met Dr. Keswani the morning of the procedure. He explained to me what he was going to do and the process. His plan was to remove it all through the colonoscopy. When I woke up, I found out he was successful. He was able to get everything, and everything went well.
What follow-up was required after this procedure?
It was recommended that I come in for another colonoscopy to repeat to make sure they retrieved everything and that nothing had come back. The results of my follow-up colonoscopy were good. I was cleared and nothing had grown. I'm absolutely grateful that I did it at 47. I think that knowing what I know now, had I wait, the outcome could have been much worse.
What do you think about using AI in medical procedures?
I'm 100% supporter for technology. I think that if there's something out there that can help improve a process or improve a procedure, I support that. And they're going to get a very comprehensive result from something that they can compare and contrast with what they see with their own eye. I think it's really exciting. The technology that we see on a day-to-day basis is amazing. So it will be fantastic to see what's coming down the line.
What do you want others to learn from your experience?
My message would be, don't put it off. Recommendation is 45. I would do it as soon as you can. And honestly, it's not a big deal. Colon cancer is so significant, and the outcome would be so much greater if you could get it in advance and get ahead of it. And I would strongly recommend and urge my patients and my friends and family members that they should be doing this. This is something you can do. It has known positive outcome. It's imperative. We have to be our own advocates.
I just want to make one quick comment. You remember how Brooks said that 1 millimeter difference makes a difference, and for him, literally, a month could have made a difference between needing a major surgery and an endoscopic procedure, and a couple years could have made a difference between a colon cancer survivor and someone who passed away from colon cancer. So
What stage was he diagnosed with?
so he was diagnosed with what we call carcinoma in situ, the very earliest version of cancer that can still be removed through an endoscopy.
So it didn't go through the colon wall,
Deep
no
in the
lymph
colon.
node involvement.
Exactly.
Why couldn't they get it during the first colonoscopy?
Yeah, there's an area of gastroenterology that Austin and I specialize in, which is more complex procedures. So, and that's why sometimes people with these larger lesions will come to us.
And was that an AI person asking the questions? And is it going to take my job?
I think we
It
can all
sounded
agree
like it,
was
didn't
not
it?
nearly as good as you are. I think we can all agree. So don't worry.
Okay, good. Phew. Okay, so this video mentioned GI Genius, and this is something that we're going to be talking about because the good news is there's some exciting technology, and of course, I'm sort of joking, but everybody's very nervous about AI and what it portends for people's jobs and the robot apocalypse and everything, but it is really, really exciting when it comes to medicine, the potential of artificial intelligence. And can you quickly explain how AI is revolutionizing and will continue to revolutionize healthcare? Because I think people still don't understand it.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question because there's so much noise and hype about AI that it's important to take a step back and really understand what is really going on here. And it's really not magic. Because you have to remember that AI is not new. It's been around since the 50s. But what's new is it's gotten so good. I mean, it's gotten extremely good. It's gotten so good because we're in a new era of AI where the computer and the algorithms that make up this artificial intelligence is now being trained by data. Kind of like how you train your kids. Like you show them fruit, like this is an apple, this is a pear, this is a banana. And then you repeat when they get it wrong, you reinforce them with something, with rewards. AI works the same way. But the difference is there's millions of data records that you can feed the computer. So it can learn really well. And because it's a computer, it can do these computations to give you results extremely fast. It can do it in real time. You saw little clips of that in the video where the GI Genius box was in real time giving the doctor advice by showing him or her where they needed to take a second look. Kind of like a second pair of eyes, like an assistant. And so by doing these calculations that's fed by millions of data of records, the AI can actually be an assistant to give better outcomes and lead to better therapy. So it's an exciting time. In fact, some experts in AI say that the healthcare area is the area that stands to have the most benefit from AI of any other field. And I've worked in multiple fields, and that's why I work at Medtronic today, because I wanted to be part of this revolution.
And so it's all these, they call them large language models, but it's just millions and millions of data sets that allow the physician or the clinician or the technologist to kind of compare what they're seeing versus all these other data sets in a similar situation. Is that basically it, Ken?
That's basically it. It's, there are a couple different flavors of AI. The kind of AI that powers our GI Genius product is what's called machine learning, or actually it's deep learning. It doesn't go all the way into generative AI, nor does it need to, because you're not generating new content. You're learning from the history of others who have had colonoscopies or others who have generated data associated with having a polyp or having a lesion. And the GI Genius algorithm has been trained on over 13 million records.
Wow.
And it's gone through clinical trials in multiple regions to give us evidence that it's a better way of doing screening. In fact, it's been shown that it can give 14% more lesion detections and 50% fewer false positives. And so 50%, excuse me, fewer missed polyps while doing the colonoscopy, because it's a computer and it never gets tired, and it's very repeatable, and so it's extremely good at what it does. And so I'm very optimistic about it. And one thing I'm really excited about is this is not just limited to colonoscopies. The science of using machine learning and data analytics and artificial intelligence in healthcare applies to many other therapies and cancer detections, recognizing irregular heartbeats for saving someone from having a heart attack. We have an FDA-approved product that does that. Guiding surgeons in robotic-assisted surgery with the repeatable, precise placement of the surgical instrument every single time, because it's been trained on millions of data points. So the future is extremely bright, but it's important to remember that in every case, these therapies that are AI assisted are to assist the human doctor professional. And so this is one of our tenets of how we apply AI, is it's a human assistant, kind of like your driver assist in your car.
Yeah,
And,
God, how did we operate before GPS? I have no idea. I used to read maps, and now I couldn't get anywhere without Siri telling me where to turn. Raj, so tell us how you're using GI Genius with your patients and sort of what the results have been and how you're liking it.
Yeah, I think the idea of, and sort of Ken alluded to this, and I think it's really important for us to understand, AI is making a good doctor better, right? So AI is not meant to take someone who's awful at their job and somehow make them amazing. So that's important, that you need to have someone who's thoughtful and skilled, carrying all the stuff that is intrinsic to it. And to be fair, at Northwestern, we were already doing all that, so we thought we couldn't get better, right? Maybe it's arrogant. We thought the machine couldn't help us, right? And so we actually started.
Doctors arrogant?
Okay.
What are you talking about?
I thought we were friends. We took a selfie together yesterday. This is very hurtful. It's the idea. Okay, can we get better? Right? Can we get better? And it is humbling to say that no matter how hard you're trying, how good you do, that, like Ken was saying, AI makes us significantly better still. So even though you're doing a great job and you're patting yourself on the back in a very humble way, the technology makes it better. And so we decided, as a healthcare system, and we have multiple hospitals from rural to urban, we said, once we know this is true, how can we not offer this to our patients? Like, how do we now say, well, that was pretty good, we did a lot better. All right, well, we're good now. We had to then say, okay, it's everywhere, right? And so now Everyone who gets a procedure has it with AI assistance in the entire healthcare system.
Have you had an experience where you missed a polyp or the GI genius said, wait a second, back up? Because I know, for example, flat polyps are really hard to identify during a colonoscopy, but where a GI genius sort of supported you and found a polyp that perhaps you might not have found.
So it absolutely does, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have these reduction in miss rates. The potential arrogance of doctors is they might have said, oh, I might have seen that anyway, right? It's very hard to convince people that they wouldn't have seen something. But there's this classic study that that the radiologists, when they look through CT scans to look for lung nodules, they're all looking very intently, they're looking intently, and they're like, oh, I didn't see any nodules. And then the researcher says, oh, did you see the gorilla that was literally, we put in the CT scan of the lungs, and none of them see the gorilla because they're so focused on looking for one thing. So we have such tunnel vision during procedures. We need someone else there to keep an eye on us, and that's what computers are going to do. They're not going to replace us yet. Yet.
Thanks. Austin, I know your role bridges healthcare and health tech, and I'm curious to hear the reaction physicians, other than Raj, who's obviously embraced this technology, how other physicians are feeling about GI Genius and other AI-powered technology.
Yeah, I was going to say, Raj and I think, are outliers. We love technology, but I think a lot of doctors out there, have a healthy dose of skepticism, as they should. I think all doctors out there, by nature of being in the field, are kind of risk averse and maybe less prone to embracing something new.
I would probably older doctors are like, what, right?
Yeah, like,
a little
what is
bit.
all this AI about, right? And I think that, medicine, we're taught to really drive our decision-making based on a lot of data and evidence that's being published through trials. And as Ken mentioned, from all the trials that have been done, there's been a large amount in a very short amount of time. And we've shown, on average, a 14% increase in this precancerous adenoma polyp detection rate. And why that's important is because every 1% increase in that is actually a 3% decrease in new cases of colorectal cancer. So it's pretty significant. And I think we have to get over this idea of, it's going to replace us as doctors, our jobs. I don't think that in the time that we've had AI out, no doctor has been replaced by AI yet. But yeah, trying to help doctors understand kind of how this technology works and the innovation that goes into it, how this is developed is going to be an important part of getting over that skepticism.
Yeah, how do you do that though, Austin? How do you convince them that this is actually going to help them and, most importantly, help patients?
Yeah. Well, honestly, using the device, I think we hear a lot of stories about how at first doctors are hesitant, and it only takes one case where the AI actually, points them in a direction that they would never have thought to even look in, and that aha moment is kind of what changes their minds. And so hopefully with more of those examples and stories and word of mouth, we can get the message out there that this really isn't something scary, but actually helps them do their job better.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that. I think storytelling is super important because oftentimes, people have this preconceived notion about AI, as you said, being this sort of this replacement technology and being something that it isn't. It's not like magic. It's simply an algorithm that's been trained on massive amounts of data to help you. And so I like to tell stories about how we use AI in our daily lives in ways that we just don't even realize because we've just absorbed it into our everyday routines. Like when we drive our vehicles every day, we're using AI because our vehicles have been tuned using algorithms trained by data to help you steer better, to help you brake in a more smooth way, to help you accelerate around corners to help you use less gas in your combustion. If you have an electric car, how to control the energy management in your battery. All of those are examples of how you're taking advantage of AI in everyday life. And that's just automotive. I mean, I could give you examples in
Email,
consumer,
like, they
email.
write my email for
Yeah.
me. I'm like, wait, I didn't mean to. I don't want to say that.
Exactly.
I have to
Anybody
hit the
take a
rep-
selfie today, right? If you've taken a selfie or used a cell phone, there's a ton of AI built into cell phone cameras that help them process the image to be better than they would be if they had no AI. So the AI that we're talking about for healthcare is no different. It's helping these amazing doctors be even more amazing.
Brooks, you've been such an incredibly powerful advocate for colon cancer screening. How are you spreading the word that people need to be screened? They need to be screened starting at age 45, but also for these younger patients like you, and about sort of the benefits of this AI technology. So tell us what you're doing out there.
So when I ran a data company before my diagnosis, and so when I was going through treatment, I was kind of coping with everything by looking at the data and just learning everything I could about colorectal cancer. And this was not on my radar before I was diagnosed. I mean, I was barely thinking about cancer generally. And so what I just learned this mind-blowing data around colon cancer that I just said that people need to know. Like I learned the biggest thing was that more people die of colon cancer than breast cancer each year. Like in some ways it's bigger than breast cancer, and I was already so aware of breast cancer kind of growing up. To find out this is just as big of a disease that no one talks about was crazy. And then to find out that this is actually preventable in a way that other cancers are not preventable. So like this exciting thing that this is preventable, and then to just start to put those together. And then also to learn that it's really underfunded, that it only raises $20 million in private philanthropy each year compared to $400 million that breast cancer raises. And so because it's so underfunded, that's one reason we don't talk about it at all. You know, we don't have any like planes, you know, doing fundraisers or pink planes, or, you know, we don't have any big corporations doing big campaigns for colon cancer. In fact, and then just thinking about how do we get out awareness for this, because it's preventable, like people can do something about it versus just hope that they are, you know, unlucky. And so I was actually looking back at what you did 20 years ago and seeing the impact it had. She said it was 20% increase in colonoscopy appointments. It was actually called the Couric effect.
Thank you.
It was her.
I'm going to change my name to Katie Colon or something.
Yeah, totally. So I thought it'd been over 20 years since you did that. And I thought, okay, we need another celebrity to get out there and get this back into the news. And so I pulled all my contacts, not like I have that many, but I called a couple of people and got a meeting with Ryan Reynolds and his team. And Ryan Reynolds was turning 45. And I pitched him on kind of why colon cancer is so important and asked his team for help. And they said yes. And he he did a video with his friend Rob McElhaney. They both got colonoscopies right when they turned 45. And it was a 7-minute video. It had 16 million views in the first week. And then we saw that a third-party company saw that does scheduling for appointments. They saw a 36% increase in colonoscopies in the next couple months. And they called it the Ryan Reynolds effect. So I don't know.
36%.
I don't know. The data, the data is, is not apples to apples. But we think that it prevented at least 1,000 cases of colon cancer.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's awesome. And I want to post the video of Ryan on my Instagram and all my social media accounts and give you both props for doing that, because that's amazing.
One thing I wanted to say, Katie, before you move on, one
sure.
thing I just wanted to call out for those in the audience, to call back to all the conversation about AI, and there is differences in quality of colonoscopies. When you go to get your colonoscopy, make your first appointment, what you can do to make sure you're getting a high quality colonoscopy is to ask them to tell you, ask the doctor to tell you what their ADR rate is, adenoma detection rate. And it should be about 50%, right? If they're a good doctor, 50% is the target. And if they're using the new technology like GI Genius, then that increases it by 14%, so that helps their ADRs go up. You're getting a better colonoscopy. But that's the question you ask to get a solid colonoscopy.
Before we talk about at-risk communities, I just want to mention some things quickly, and Brooks, if you want to chime in. Okay, so a lot of people say, I don't have a family history. 70% or so of colon cancer cases have no family history. So that should not give you a false sense of security. You still need to be screened at 45. If you have a first-line relative who has been diagnosed or passed away from colorectal cancer, you need to be screened 10 years before that person was diagnosed. For example, my husband Jay was diagnosed at 41. My daughter Ellie had her first colonoscopy at 31. So those are things, I just want to kind of just review the guidelines. Now, when it comes to younger patients, we heard how Brooks had to be her own advocate and really push physicians to give you a colonoscopy, to say it was more than just hemorrhoids. And I just wanted to very briefly review the symptoms of colorectal cancer for all of you. So, blood in your stool. Now, that doesn't always mean you see blood in the toilet. That could mean your stools are just darker than usual because it's hidden blood. It's called occult blood. And so, and please correct me, Raj, if I'm saying anything wrong, because I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV. But I know a lot about this. But I know a lot about this. So if you have like unexplained weight loss, like your bowel habits have changed, blood in your stools, either blood, or just dark stools, or just a change in those things, and you're not feeling well, like you're tired or fatigued, anemia, whatever, you need to, even if you're not 45, right, given the fact that we're seeing this increase, you need to talk to your doctor. And if your doctor blows you off, you need to find another doctor or go to an actual gastroenterologist. Brooks, anything else about if you're under 45, what people should know?
I would have, even if you're with family history, like you said, if your parent was diagnosed 10 years, you get your colonoscopy 10 years before, but also counts for a large polyp. They didn't need to have actual colon cancer. They need to have a polyp that was larger than 10 millimeters. And so having a conversation about whether or not your parents had big polyps is a conversation worth having, and then you can also bring that to the doctor.
And genetic testing. I mean, I really recommend that people get genetic testing. I got it, and I found out I have a gene mutation that makes me at a slightly higher risk, believe it or not, of colon cancer. So I want my children, my girls, to be especially vigilant. So don't be afraid of genetic testing. I mean, it just really helps guide you in terms of how much screening you should get. So I think that's a really important thing, don't you?
No, I think it's everything that was said was so important. I think I just want to really highlight the importance of what Brooks said and did, right? It's that advocacy, and it's very cliche to say, but you know your own body, and you know when something's wrong. I mean, statistically, it is hemorrhoids, right? That's just the reality. That's why everyone says it. But there's a difference between I bled once versus I'm bleeding every day and I've never had any bleeding before and I have no reason to have hemorrhoids. And so it's not that the doctors always want to say, oh, just blow you off. And some of them do, and you need to find a new doctor. But it's the going back and saying, actually, I don't feel right. Things aren't right. Maybe you should check my blood count. Maybe we should do something else. So that advocacy, self-advocacy message is really what I think is important for everyone to have. And also for your relatives and your friends, right? To say, hey, you're not feeling right. If your doctor didn't say it was anything, they might mean well, but they didn't really hear what you're saying, which is this is very abnormal for me. And so I think that's a very important message that, for me, I guess I hope resonates the most.
Yeah, thank goodness you did that, honestly.
The doctors doctors don't, well, I mean, it's awkward to say this up on stage, but like for me, the doctors didn't ask me any follow-up questions about this blood in my stool. They didn't ask me, what did it look like? You know, give me a full description. And they should have, because in my case, and we'll describe it to you, it looked like I'd been eating tomatoes. It was like a kind of a ribbon and I was like, wait, I eat tomatoes all the time and I don't see it show up. But I felt like it was tomatoes, not blood. It wasn't obviously blood. And so
Thanks
it was.
for sharing.
I know. I thought that's exactly what you want to hear. Super gross.
I mean, I talk about this all the time. I'm just being funny.
But it's important to know, to be able, it's I don't want to talk about it, but it's also really important that doctors don't want to talk about it either. No one wants to talk about it, but it's actually really important to normalize talking about it with your doctor. You have to start the conversation in many cases to just go there. Because that really was the key thing.
No, you're so right. We have to kind of normalize these conversations because it's another part of your body that you have to take care of. And, that's the bottom line. Austin, how are you ensuring that at-risk communities know about their options for care and know about that these screening possibilities are available to them?
Yeah, so colorectal cancer doesn't discriminate, but the reality of the situation in our country is that there are certain populations that are disproportionately affected. And we see that, for instance, Black Americans have a 20% higher chance of getting diagnosed with colorectal cancer, a 40% higher chance of dying of colorectal cancer. We see similar disparities among the Hispanic population. Asian Americans are also the least likely to get screened for colorectal cancer. So there's a lot of discrepancies out there. I think that there's a lot of drivers of these disparities. Some is awareness, sometimes it's affordability, sometimes it's access to healthcare. And to target kind of the access part of it, we at Medtronic actually took on a really creative way of trying to get new technology out to underserved groups that normally don't get access to any sort of new technology early on. And so we had what we called the Health Equity Assistance Program, and we partnered with Amazon Web Services and one of our GI societies, the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy, and we identified certain centers out there and provided 130 free units of GI Genius, essentially, to allow some doctors to have AI assistance when they're doing colonoscopy. So that was one effort. And we have ongoing efforts at Medtronic to also try to get the messaging out there directly to patients and the general public, direct to consumer, because we really believe that empowering people with information themselves is in some ways improving access to healthcare as well. If they're empowered with this sort of information, they know to ask their doctor to get a colonoscopy. They know to ask their doctor, hey, do you have artificial intelligence? And because I want one, want a colonoscopy with that technology. So, informing everyone, I think, to be advised and inform themselves is probably one part of the equation.
Outreach is so important. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2022, I learned that women of color have a 40% higher mortality rate. And some of it is access and, this two-tiered, unfortunately, healthcare system we have in this country. So just going directly to those communities and educating them either through Black churches or neighborhood fairs or whatever is so important, because I just felt like that was just a really upsetting statistic when I heard it. And Raj, I know that you care deeply about addressing health inequities. And one thing you pointed out to me when we were talking is this is actually, AI and something like GI Genius is a way to level the playing field for certain patients. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, and Brooks touched on this, and I want to really emphasize this. And I talk to my patients about this as well, right? So when I give you a Tylenol, no matter what, you're all getting the same Tylenol, right? Everyone's getting the same dose. If I give everyone a colonoscopy, if someone gets a colonoscopy, everyone gets a colonoscopy in this room, it's not the same, right? Depending on the quality of the procedure. And not to get into statistics, but the chance of you getting colon cancer if you get a colonoscopy by someone who is not very good compared to someone who's excellent is about 5 times higher after the colonoscopy, right? So there's a wide variation in the skill of a colonoscopist. And unfortunately, that can be disproportionately lower skilled colonoscopists in areas that are underserved. So you already have the inequity of people not seeking care, but then you also have when they seek the care that they are getting a lower quality exam. AI has the potential and is already out there leveling the playing field more and more. It can make someone who goes from being okay at colonoscopy to great to better, but if we can get everyone at least to good, I think that's going to change a lot in terms of these really, really unfortunate cases of someone doing everything they're supposed to do and then still getting colon cancer 3 years later, which is just the most devastating story, right? I went on time, but I didn't get a high quality exam, and now I have cancer a couple years later. AI has the potential to change that.
That phenomenon you just described applies to many therapies that are aided by AI. Spinal surgery, same thing. The work we do in cardiac rhythm management, the diabetes pumps that you use are all like that we develop have AI algorithms in that do smart insulin dosing. So it's a great equalizer of bringing some of the best capabilities to the masses, and I'm really excited about that.
Ken, anything else you're excited about when it comes to AI in healthcare? I was telling you all that I read about a scientist at MIT who had breast cancer and was working with an AI, with a technical, an engineer, thank you, on AI. And basically, they were finding that AI is not only great for screening, but ultimately it might predict that you are a patient who could, even if you have no signs of it, you could be diagnosed with breast cancer in the next 5 years. And, of course, that's scary. On the other hand, it lets you know that you need to make sure you get screened, that taking steps, lifestyle steps that will reduce your risk. So what are you excited about in addition to everything you've said today, Ken?
So there's a lot about AI in healthcare that excites me, but let me just set the context first. There are more than 700 FDA-approved AI healthcare products on the market available today. Most people don't know that, right? And so this is not like a brand new thing. Most of those 700 AI-approved FDA products are in the radiology space. And so, and we're just getting started. I mean, this is like day one of AI in health tech. Imagine what it's going to look like, 100 in day 100, where the many technologists who are working on AI, they're hard at work training these AI algorithms with data, they're validating them, they're doing the hard work of getting the AI in the right condition for it to be used responsibly. And what I'm really excited about is that the GI Genius product is not just about colonoscopy. The way it was architected and designed was as a platform. And so it can host other therapies, and it can make operating rooms intelligent by having other therapies that have gone through the hard work of figuring out how do you responsibly manage the data to train an AI algorithm to help a clinician be a better clinician. That can then be quickly deployed into the right hands of a doctor to begin to give better outcomes. And so just do the mental math, and you could see that the future of healthcare is going to be extremely bright because of these kind of platforms that we've built at Medtronic, coupled with the kinds of AI-enabled therapies of the future. So I'm super excited about the promise of how this is going to change patients and doctors for years to come.
We're almost out of time. I'd just like to go down the row and give just like a 15-second closing thought that you'd like everyone here in this audience or anybody who might be watching this somewhere else to know.
I tell everyone, like, colon cancer is preventable and colonoscopy is prevented. They don't just catch it early, they prevent it because they are going in and snipping out your polyps. And also, polyps are super common. 1 in 3 people already have polyps by your mid-40s. And so knowing that this is super common, polyps are common, and that colonoscopies go in and snip it out, I mean, I think, kind of reinforcing the message that colonoscopies prevent colon cancer is sort of my life's work now, to get everybody to kind of remember that.
Austin?
I would say talk more about butts and guts. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Normalize it. It's another body part, just like our elbow or something. So, you know.
Austin has a book coming out
I do.
in April called
Gut and Owner's Manual.
and that basically is just a kind of a how-to manual to your whole digestive system,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So look for it.
Available for pre-order.
Ken?
For me, it's the promise of the collision of healthcare and technology, when done responsibly, will lead to better outcomes.
My message is pretty simple. Everyone here is obviously motivated, and many are already up to date on other healthcare. What would be helpful is motivating your friends and family, right? So take this message of hope that this is something that we're making massive strides in, and sort of disseminate it to your community. You know, you may not call it the Couric effect. You know, it might just be your local family effect, but I think it still shows you just the advocacy, how much of an impact it can have on others.
And I have a closing thought too, which is, you know, in 2 weeks, my daughter is going to have her first baby, and it's going to be my first grandchild. And of course, thank you. Well, but, you know, I think of everything that my husband missed. You know, he didn't get to see his daughters graduate from college. He didn't get to walk Ellie down the aisle. He's not going to be here to have a grandchild. And I just don't want you all or anyone you love or know or care about to miss those moments. So it would be so wonderful if tomorrow you call your doctor if you haven't gotten a colonoscopy, you make an appointment, or you talk to your doctor about other screening options that are out there, and you tell everyone you know who's 45 or over that they need to get screened, and you also kind of familiarize yourself with the symptoms of colorectal cancer, since people under 45 are not disposable. You know, you want them to be around too. So you really have to, as Brooks did, advocate for yourself, and you also really have to take care of your health. You owe it to yourself, and more importantly, I think you owe it to the people who you love you and depend on you. So if you could even, you know, it's Colon Cancer Awareness Month, so it won't be out of left field if you wanted to post on social media like, hey everybody, I'm just giving you a reminder that you need to get screened for colon cancer, and just have this conversation with your friends and family. It's much better. It's not at the top of anyone's to-do list, but it's much better than being diagnosed with colon cancer, believe me. So I just want to leave you with that message. Thank you all so much. Thank you.